Lecture number 8. Main goals and principles of certification. Plan of the lecture. The purpose and principles of conformity. Forms of compliance confirmation. Voluntary confirmation of conformity. Science matching. Goals and principles of conformity assessment. Confirmation of compliance is carried out from the following purposes: certification of compliance of products, design processes, including surveys, production, construction, installation, commissioning, operation, storage, transportation, sale and disposal works, surveys of other objects with the technical regulations, standards, codes of rules, and terms of contracts. The second, assistance to purchasers, including consumers, in the competent selection of products, works, or services. The third, improving the competitiveness of products, works, and services in the domestic and international markets. The fourth, creating conditions for ensuring the free movement of goods across the territory of the Republic of Kazakhstan, as well as for international economic, scientific and technical cooperation and international trade. All these goals have a common focus, which is to create a stable impression among buyers and consumers of products, works, and services about compliance with the documents specified by a manufacturer or seller, through which, first of all, guarantees are provided that there is no risk to health and safety for the property of individuals or legal entities as well as the environment. To achieve these goals, the principles that are used to confirm compliance are defined: availability of information on the procedure for verifying compliance to interested parties, the inadmissibility of applying mandatory conformity assessment to objects that don't meet the requirements of technical regulations, establishing a list of forms and the schemes of mandatory conformity assessment for certain types of products in the relevant technical regulations, reducing the time required for mandatory conformity assessment and the cost of the applicant, the admissibility of forcing the implementation of voluntary conformity assessment, including in a certain system of voluntary certification. Protection of the property interests of applications, compliance with commercial secrets in relation to information obtained during the implementation of conformity assessment. It isn't allowed to apply the mandatory confirmation of compliance with voluntary certification. It should be noted that the principles of conformity assessment apply to all forms of conformity assessment, mandatory and voluntary. In the previously existing law on certification of products and services, forms and schemes of obligatory certification established by the authorized body of executive power in the field of certification, or other bodies of executive power, and the list of products whose conformity is confirmed by the declaration of conformity approved by the government. By this principle, the law has determined that the list of forms and the schemes of mandatory conformity assessment for a specific type of product cannot be established by any other document other than technical regulations. The principle of reducing the time required for mandatory conformity assessment and the applicant's cost will have a significant impact on the growth of business initiatives and the development of production, expanding the range and, as a result, improving the quality of life for various segments of the population. The definition of the principle of protection of property interests of applications, observance of commercial secrecy in relation to information obtained in the implementation of conformity obliges bodies providing certification of conformity to a regime for trade secret provided by the complainants, thereby ensuring the protection of their property interests, and non-property rights. However, the law on technical regulation doesn't specify which information should be subject to the prescribed regime. Confirmation of conformity is developed and applied equally and equally regardless of the country and/or place of origin of products. The implementation of the design process, including research, production, construction, installation, commissioning, operation, storage, transportation, sale and disposal, performance of works and services, types of features of transactions and/or persons who are manufacturers, performers, sellers, buyers. Forms of compliance confirmation. As noted earlier, the form of conformity assessment on the territory of Republic of Kazakhstan may be voluntary or mandatory. Voluntary confirmation of compliance is carried out in the form of voluntary certification. Mandatory confirmation of compliance is carried out the following forms: adoption of the Declaration of Conformity, Declaration of Conformity, obligatory certification. The law distinguishes that mandatory verification is carried out only for compliance with the requirements of the technical regulations, and voluntary confirmation can be carried out to establish compliance with national standards. Standards of organizations, codes of rules, voluntary certification systems, and the contract terms. In case of mandatory conformity assessment, mandatory certification or declaration of conformity is used. In the latter case, there are two possible options. The first, acceptance of the declaration based only their own evidence. The second, acceptance of the declaration based on their own evidence obtained with the participation of the certification body and/or an accredited testing laboratory center, the third party. Voluntary confirmation of compliance. The objects of voluntary conformity assessment are products, process of production, operation, storage, transportation, sale and disposal works, and services, as well as other objects for which standards, voluntary certification systems, and the contracts establish requirements. Conformity assessment can be carried out to establish compliance with national standards, preliminary national standards, standards of organizations, codes of rules, voluntary certification systems, and the contract terms. Voluntary confirmation of compliance is carried out on the initiative of the applicant under the terms of the contract between the applicant and the certification body. The functions of the certification body carries out acknowledgement of the conformity of objects of voluntary confirmation of compliance, issues certificates of conformity for objects that have passed voluntary certification, grants applicants the right to apply the conformity mark, if the application of the conformity mark is provided for by the corresponding voluntary certification system, suspends or terminates the validity of the certificates of conformity issued by them. Speaking about the voluntary certification body, it should be noted that the law doesn't contain any specific instructions regarding the need for its accreditation, as is the case with the mandatory certification body. A voluntary certification system can be created by a legal entity and/or an individual entrepreneur or several legal entities and/or individual entrepreneurs. Requirements for newly created voluntary certification system. Establish a list of objects subject to certification and their characteristics for compliance with which voluntary certification is carried out. Establish the rules for performing the work provided for by this system of voluntary certification and the procedure of their payment. To determine the participant of the voluntary certification system, provide for the need to apply the mark of conformity of the voluntary certification system. Mark of conformity. In the system of voluntary certification, it is allowed to use the mark of conformity of corresponding system of voluntary certification and the mark of conformity to the national standard. The use of the conformity mark is aimed at achieving the following goals: informing purchasers about the verification of compliance of specific products with the requirements of voluntary certification systems or national standards, in order for them to make a competent choice of products and obtain the necessary confidence that the products offered to them meet all the requirements established in a specific voluntary certification system or national standard for these products, increasing the confidence of buyers in the products of a particular manufacturer sold on the market, improving the competitiveness of products in the domestic and international markets, advertising the products that meet not only safety requirements but also requirements that ensure product quality. The law differentiates the procedure for applying the mark of conformity of the voluntary certification system and the mark of conformity to the national standards. The first, certification objects certified in the voluntary certification system may be marked with the mark of conformity of the voluntary certification system. The procedure for applying such a conformity mark is established by the rules of the corresponding voluntary certification system. The second, the use of the sign of conformity to national standards is carried out by the applicant on a voluntary basis to any suitable applicant in the manner prescribed by the national standardization body. The organization of work on the application of the mark of compliance with the national standard is carried out by the national standardization body of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Application of the mark of conformity to the national standard is carried out by the applicant on a voluntary basis in any way convenient for him in the order established by the specified standard.